Get the home field advantage every time with Fairfield by Marriott, official hotel partner of the NCAA. Whether you're a student athlete working toward your championship dreams or your team's biggest fan, Fairfield by Marriott has everything you need to get ready for game day. From comfortable guest rooms to complimentary hot breakfast, Fairfield is part of the Marriott Bonvoy portfolio of hotels and official hotel partner of the NCAA. Visit fairfield.marriott.com to book your next game day stay.
You may think your credit score isn't a big deal, but when your credit score increases, your opportunities do too, like loan approvals and lower interest rates. Chime makes it easier to build credit with the secured Chime Credit Builder Visa Credit Card. You can use it everywhere Visa credit cards are accepted. Chime helps you build your credit score safely by using your own money to make everyday purchases and on-time payments with the safer credit building feature enabled. To apply, just open a Chime checking account with a $200 qualifying direct deposit. And don't stress, there's no annual fee or credit check required to apply and get started. Build your credit history and find new opportunities with Credit Builder today. Get started at chime.com/build. That's chime.com/build. The Chime Credit Builder Visa Credit Card is issued by Stride Bank N.A. member FDIC. Chime checking account and $200 qualifying direct deposit required to apply. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply. Call 1-844-244-6363 for details. On-time payment history may have a positive impact on your credit score. Late payment may negatively impact your credit score. Results may vary.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who specialize in saving the day and for the ones who've mastered the art of keeping business moving. We offer industrial-grade supplies for every industry, with same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders, all backed by real people ready to help. So you can get the right answers and products right when you need them. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome into The Verge, a show which covers the Baltimore Orioles minor leagues. The Verge is part of BSL Radio. Baltimore Sports and Life is dedicated to analysis and discussion on the Orioles, Baltimore Ravens, and the University of Maryland. The site has a team of writers providing coverage of those teams and houses live streaming content weekly. Join the conversations at the message board, like BSL on Facebook, and follow BSL on Twitter.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we feel like having options like video podcasts and Q&A lets us be more creative on another level. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined by Bob Phelan. Our co-host Nick Stevens is taking the week off, spending some time with his family, but he'll be back with us next week. On tonight's episode, we're going to be joined by Bowie Baysox outfielder Johnny Rizer, who's going to talk about his season. And we're also going to get into some of the big news of the day, including the promotion of Jahmai Jones to the major leagues. All of that will be on tonight's episode. But first, On the Verge is brought to you courtesy of Mercer Floor and Home Carpet One. Mercer is a third-generation family business. It was established in 1959 and is located on Main Street in beautiful, historic downtown Westminster, Maryland. For all of your flooring needs, think Mercer. So I'll jump in now and introduce tonight's guest. He was a seventh-round pick in the 2019 draft out of TCU and is currently an outfielder on the Bowie Baysox. He is Johnny Rizer. Johnny, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. So as a 2019 draftee, you were part of the first draft class under Mike Elias's front office. Has the process for developing hitters changed since then, and if so, how?
It for sure has. Just coming into 2019 after I was drafted, there wasn't a clear setup, clear guidance of what was going on with the hitters, offense. We didn't really have a plan. We just were going out there and performing. They didn't really give us a goal or what to strive for as terms of offensive production. But this year has been very clear since the start. They've been implementing a plan, a process, and it's been going very well in terms of the Orioles minor leagues system, the farm. It's been a great time.
And beyond just the statistics, obviously you performed really well with Aberdeen, earned that promotion to Bowie, and you're doing pretty well there as well. But even outside of just the base stats, do you feel like there's been a progression this year for you with like the analytics and all that?
100%. I can't stress enough how productive it's been in terms of everything that they've provided and the goals that they've been wanting us to achieve and strive for. Just 2019, I did well in terms of numbers, but it's more than that. You can do well at a lower level, and like short season low A. It's a tough place to be, but as you move up, it's going to get tougher and tougher, and that's what's going to separate the good from the great. And I think just a learning process and taking the plan that they're trying to give us is in terms of like swinging, it's balls and strikes, the swing selection, swing decision, and just I think that's just going to help overall in the long run. And I can already see the results as I move forward.
That's awesome. Now, speaking of getting that promotion, what is it like to get promoted in the middle of a season and just have your whole? I'm sure it's exciting, right? But it's also, it's a change of scenery. How tough is that?
It's just like you said, it's tough in terms of just like leaving friends behind, but you get to meet a lot more new people. You get to new scenery. That's what I like. I like playing away stadiums because you don't get in the repetitive motion of things such as playing a Bowie for 4 straight weeks or something. But it's always good just to be able to just experience new things and just to hang around new people. So it's a good experience.
Would you say that jump from high A to double A is as big as advertised? I
honestly think so. It's a challenge in terms of just how different the pitching is because there's a lot of good pitching in high A, but what separates them is being able to locate their pitches, their fastball, their off speed, and just doing it in any single count. It's tough, but that's the thing with the Orioles. They're implementing that swing decision, and that's been going well with us. I think we lead like double A and walks, OPS maybe, but it's been pretty cool just saying all the statistics. But
yeah, now let's talk about something a little more fun. There was a viral moment you had about a month ago, I think, when you made a catch jumping into foul territory. It was pretty outstanding.
Yeah.
How was that moment for you? And did you realize that it didn't count as an out at the time, or did you have to have that explained to you?
That was a cool moment for sure. Just being behind Grayson, a stud, and you're just trying to do anything you can to help him out, get an out. And so, it was a ball hit down the line. I knew, like, I visualized before I even got into made that play. I was like, maybe if they hit a foul ball, I'll be running down the line. I'll maybe hop the fence, and it just worked out perfectly. But I didn't know it wasn't an out until I looked at the umpire. He was saying safe. I'm like, what is that? But I mean, I guess in the rule book it says it's still in play unless you gotta. But yeah, it was tough. But just to make that catch was pretty cool.
We'll still add it to your highlight reel.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a pretty big outfield at Richmond, so you got to cover a lot of ground at that point. Was there a moment where you knew you were actually going to jump the wall, or did it just happen?
It just happened. It was just, I guess, athleticism and instinct. So I just saw the wall, took a quick glance. I knew I couldn't reach over and just grab it, so I knew I could jump it and just jumped in. It just happened.
So how is the culture in Bowie right now? The team's been having a lot of success this year, but everything we've heard, we talked to Ryan Fuller last month, and everything we read out of Bowie is that it's just a really special culture from the coaching staff on down. So how are things in that clubhouse right now?
It's amazing, honestly. Just from AA, AAA, I know there's a lot of guys that were moved around and stuff, but we still have a great culture, great program. Bowie is amazing. I love the people there, the coaches, the players, the staff, just everyone there. It's been a great experience, and even though we have some guys that left and went to AAA that were big energy providers, I feel that we still have a lot of guys in Bowie that can still bring that energy, bring life to the clubhouse. And I just think that's going to be really cool down the road to see what happens. But, yeah.
So you've been with Kyle Stowers and Zach Watson pretty much the whole way since you've been drafted.
Mm-hmm.
What is the chemistry like between the three of you?
It's pretty cool. It's a unique one. We got Zach Watson. He's from Louisiana, and Kyle Stowers from Cali, and me from Texas. So it's a good little mix. We're all different in our own ways, and we all get along, and we all bring something to the table. So I think it's a really good mix.
Now, how hard is it to stay prepared mentally and physically last year in 2020 with the pandemic? You know, you're getting ready for the season. It shuts down. You have a whole year. What do you do in that time, and how tough was that?
Yeah, it was grind for sure. It's just finding ways to keep yourself busy. That's the biggest thing. It's a long time. You don't know when the season's going to start up again. You don't know anything. You're on the edge of your seat. You don't know if they're going to restart the season and bring us back. You don't know how this COVID thing's going to work out. And so we just remained patient and just trusted the process. And I'm sure a bunch of the guys on the team did the same, just working out, hitting baseballs, just doing whatever they could to stay ready. And I just think the biggest thing was just being mentally ready and physically ready. You just never know when the season was going to start up or what would happen. So it was tough, but we made it work. We managed.
Despite that, did you feel like you made some improvements in that time? Were you able to utilize that to the best of your ability, or was it really getting back into the thick of things that when you could really implement things?
For me personally, it was a big time for me to just be healthy and just get back to normal, because I had hip surgery in December of 2019. So all of 2020, I would have been out for until July maybe. So half the season right there. So COVID was kind of a blessing to me in all honesty, but that's the biggest thing, was just trying to stay healthy and get strong. So,
did they kind of have an expectation set out for you that you would start the year at high A, or was that something you really had to go into spring training and earn?
They didn't really tell us, so I was just doing my best. I was having a little bit of pain still with like my hip and back, but spring training, I just was there and I was working hard, just trying to stay healthy, like I said. But I didn't know where I would be. I didn't know how things were going to go, so just kept trusting the process. Was working hard. Came towards the end of spring training, was doing well, and so they said I would be at high A. I didn't know if I'd be in high A, low A, double A, but high A was a good starting point, and then just doing well for the first month or two in Aberdeen, and then just getting promoted is part of the plan. So
who are some of the best pitchers that you faced this season?
A lot of them. Probably Cade Cavalli. He's a good stud. Tully from Akron. He's pretty good. Lefty. Medina. He just throws gas from the Yankees. Luis. And then we've faced some big leaguers like Luis Severino.
Yeah.
And then we just faced a guy from the Phillies that just rehabbed this past week. And those are always – there's really good pitching prospects in Double A. So it's always cool experiencing that and just seeing some big league guys rehabbing and being able to compete against them.
Yeah, but maybe none as good as the guys on your own team. Who would you rather stand in the box with, Grayson Rodriguez or DL Hall?
Ooh. They're both challenging, but I'd probably stand in against DL. Nah,
how do you?
Probably Grayson. Just because. And Grayson, when he throws his bullpens, I'll stand in sometimes. I'll be able to track pitches, so I think I could get a good at bat off Grayson.
You smack one on him. No. Yeah. What do you feel like you are? Are you like a guy that works better against right-handed pitching, or is there much of a split difference for you?
I'd say just the comfortability is righties for sure, but lefties, it's always like kind of a balance. Sometimes I'm feeling really good against him, and then other times it's just like kind of uncomfortable, tough to see. That's how it is with lefties. You just got to step in and compete, give your best shot.
Yeah. We have the number one prospect in baseball, obviously, you played with for a lot of the season. Just how good is Adley Rutschman?
He's unreal. He's a stud. I'm excited to see him play in the big leagues one day, probably next year. But he's a great guy, a great person to be around. He's a great person to have in a clubhouse, no matter what his talent is. He's just such a good person to be around. Just energy, confidence. He's always level-headed, no matter highs or lows. He just stays right there. Same person every day. Always competing, always grinding. So excited to have him part of the team.
So we've got some listener questions rolling in here. Vivek asks, at TCU, did you have access to similar analytical tools that you have down with the Orioles?
I think it's a little bit different in terms of like analytics. We get to see exactly where the pitches are. We have the TrackMan, just like all the analytics, the pitch speed, all that. And we didn't really get that back at TCU, and I'm not sure what they're doing now. They could be implementing the same thing, but I think the Orioles are doing a really good job with it. It's in terms of how the hitters are able to see what pitches, in terms of what the pitchers have, how their balls move, all this types of stuff. So the Orioles are doing a really good job, and I think they're ahead of the game. So see how it goes.
What is that learning curve for you like? How do they teach that to you, or is it something that you felt like you kind of had a good grasp of before they started moving in that direction?
I think I was just like a raw hitter, I guess, just not with a lot of experience. I can put the bat to the ball pretty well. So the thing with me is just being selective and waiting for a good pitch to hit, and that's what they try to preach on. Just get that good pitch in the zone and just be ready to attack it, and just spin on the breaking balls and the other pitches that they try to get you to chase, and that just improves a bunch of things for hitting. You improve your walks, you decrease strikeouts, and overall it helps hitting out a lot. And I think that's a really good thing that they got going.
Got a question here from listener David Adams. He says, in various interviews, we've heard the Orioles development staff talk about looking for players with and helping current players develop a growth mindset. What does a growth mindset mean to you, and how has the organization worked to help develop that?
Great question. In terms of growth, we're just all pushing each other to be better, and we all know that we can be great, and it comes down to the little things. We practice base running, we practice being aggressive, and just learning from our mistakes. And that's the biggest thing is just this game's a game of failure, and everyone knows that. But how you respond to it and how you, I guess, just learn from it is the biggest thing. If you just keep swinging at balls in the dirt, you got to learn from it, and you just got to be better. And that's just how you're going to improve. And then just talking with each other, talking with the players, with the staff every single day. We have meetings. We always try to improve every single day. Just try to get that 1% better. And that's tough over a long season, but it's a good clubhouse. It's a good staff, and I think just this growth mindset, it's going to help us for sure.
It's something I'm curious about is, we're at a kind of a later stage in the season. It's, later August now. How do you keep that focus day to day for the months that you have in the minor league season?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's for sure a long season. You just got to take it day by day, and we can't be thinking about, we got 1 month left, we got this, we got that. It's just, you got to stay present, and just every single day you get to the field, you're with your teammates. We're all going through the same thing. We all have aches and pains. We're all in our highs and lows. It's just part of baseball, but you just got to make it count, make every single day count, and just give your best effort, just compete every single day.
Does being in that AA playoff hunt help things with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being in that second place spot. I know that's the thing. Like, some people, I'm sure they want to see their families, they want to see their girlfriends, but we all have that end goal. It's like, if we're here right now and we're striving to win that little championship to be the best team right now, it's gonna pay dividends in the long run. That could be us in the World Series in a few years. So I look at it in a positive aspect, just taking it day by day and just putting wins on top of wins and just going out there playing hard. I think it'll pay off.
Those of us on the outside kind of look at, win-loss record of a minor league team and try to figure out what is the value in it when the goal of the minor leagues is development. But as a player, do you feel like there's something to be learned from being on a winning team in the minor league level?
I'd say so, definitely. Just because when you're losing, it's tough to get out of that rut, and you just always try to look at the negatives, and you're like, what's this guy doing? The pitching sucks, the offense sucks. Like, there's always that strain going on. But with like a winning clubhouse.
So
sorry, come on.
No, you're good. You're good.
Just being part of a winning clubhouse. The hitters are able to learn from each other. The pitchers are able to learn from each other. The coaches with that winning mindset and just coming from a winning background. It's just that's how you can win. You know what it's like. So you're not stuck in this losing. You're like, what are we doing? How are we going to get better? Just being able to win and being like, okay, that's what it feels like. That's how we got to play to our competition. I think that's what's going to help us.
I think Orioles fans can relate with that. When are we ever going to win again? Right now, in the midst of this losing streak. But Vivek also wanted to know: have you undergone any swing changes since coming to the Orioles, or are they just more refining what you already had to work with?
It's a great question too. This season's been a big season for me in terms of like growth and just mindset, approach, swings. I started out pretty hot with Aberdeen. I started out hot with Bowie. I was doing well, and then got into a little slump. And I haven't really had a slump in the minors yet until this year. And so it was tough for me, for sure, just mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I was messing with my swing. I was trying different things. I was seeing what was working, what wasn't. And then at the end of the day, I realized my swing doesn't really need much touch-ups. I mean, it's pretty solid. I don't need to be thinking about 20 different things in the box while I'm trying to hit. It's going to make it way harder. So I went back to just competing, having that mindset that I'm better than the pitcher, and that I've been doing this since I was 7 years old, just playing the game. And I've learned a lot, and my swing feels pretty good right now. I'm not trying to change much. I'm just going back to how I was, and I'm doing pretty solid, so stick with that.
Yeah, you definitely had a good week this past week. I know that. So
got to carry on that.
So, Real Talk Orioles asks, does being disciplined at the plate come with experience, or is that just something you can practice?
A little bit of both, for sure. It's definitely a lot of experience because, just like anybody, anything comes with experience. Just seeing pitches, just swinging, just being out there, getting at bats. That's just how you're going to get that good discipline. I'm sure a bunch of guys with really good discipline have been doing it since a young age, and they've developed a really good sense of the strike zone. And then you're able to practice it as well, just through practice. Like the Orioles, we do like mix, so we'll go like, hey, coach, can you throw mix? We'll throw fastballs, curveballs, changeups, and try to work an at-bat just through that. And I think that's what helps us be successful rather than just feeding us BP, just here, hit this fastball. And so it's really challenging us during practice and just being our best self and just being able to go out and perform at the game.
So we got a question here from a listener, Brandon. He wants to know if there is a player that's in the farm system right now. It could be a teammate. It could be somebody on another team in the Orioles farm system that you think is under the radar. Maybe doesn't get enough credit for how good they are.
Got a lot of studs. I don't know. I feel like a bunch of guys are just studs, and I feel like they do get credit for what they're doing. I don't feel like too many people are passed up, so I'm not sure. I can't think of anybody.
no worries. I mean, it's a very deep system.
Yeah.
When we had Matt Blood on, he talked about raise the floor, and that's definitely the case. I feel like it's all thriller, no filler in the Orioles system right now.
There's a ton of good guys.
Another question from our listener, Ben Dorst. He said, with so many highly touted outfield prospects in the system, have you all been pushing each other and learning from each other? I mean, it is a lot of depth, and when there's no filler, obviously that breeds more competition. Does that like drive you to want to do better? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I'm sure it drives everybody. And for me personally, it's it's like having a chip on your shoulder. You know, there's guys that are studs like Stowie, Watson, Shane Fontana, just a bunch of studs. So you're gonna have to just perform to your best ability, and it might add a little stress, but that's where you gotta like sit back, breathe, relax, and just know that you're good enough to play, and just go out and perform. And that's the biggest thing. And just in terms of just being around them, we push each other, and we always compete. And I think that's what helps us.
So Real Talk Orioles has one last question for you, which is, what are your thoughts on electronic strike zone? I'm just curious from the top. Have you ever actually played in the game with the electronic strike zone yet?
I haven't, actually. I heard they were going to implement it in the minors, but they never did. But in terms of having one, I kind of lean on it. I like having good calls. I don't like getting rung up on a pitch that's not in the zone. I mean, nobody does, but it's part of the game, and that's what kind of makes it. That's what kind of makes it cool. That's what makes baseball baseball. But if you just put in an electronic strike zone, just robotic umpires, it kind of takes the thrill of baseball away.
You know, in the majors, we'll hear broadcasters say a lot like, this umpire has a pitcher strike zone or this umpire has a hitter strike zone. Mm-hmm. Do you find that's true in the minor leagues where you have a book and you know a certain umpire is back there, so the strike zone is going to be wider or it's going to be narrower that particular game?
Yeah, for sure. There's some umpires that just aren't great. You know that going in. So you just got to control what you can control and just compete and just do your best and just don't worry about what the umpires do. And if you know it's a bad pitch, then you can't chase what they're trying to call. That's a bad pitch. And you got to just focus on what you know and just keep competing.
Yeah, about that robot umpires, it must be tough for catchers like Adley or Chris Hudgens they're trying to steal strikes behind the plate, but then they're arguing against the same one when they're up to bat.
So, Bob, do we have any more listener questions for Johnny?
Not that I'm aware of. Really appreciate him coming on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Johnny, thank you so much, and best of luck the rest of the way this season.
Thank y'all. Appreciate y'all having me, and I enjoy y'all's podcast. It's awesome.
Oh, thanks, man. Can't wait to see you with the Orioles. I know it's coming in a couple of years.
Hopefully.
All right, man.
All right, well, take care, y'all.
All right, you too.
All right, that was Johnny Rizer, outfielder for the Bowie Baysox. Really interesting to hear from him during what has been a good season for Bowie, but also a good season for him personally as he made the jump from Aberdeen to Bowie earlier this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he has had a lot of success, and like he said, he went through that first real slump that he's had since he's been in the Orioles minor league system, and he's bounced back in a big way. He's got his batting average up to 268 and his OPS at like 770 again, so good on him, man. It was good to have him on.
It was interesting to hear kind of how that shift in analytics and that approach to hitting really has taken place since he was drafted, because I was curious, like, was that there in 2019 and no one noticed yet? Because you know, on the outside, we really weren't hearing about it, whereas this year we're hearing a lot more about it. But it seems like it's something that's really been built up since the end of the 2019 season.
Yeah, that was definitely interesting. I mean, I know we heard a lot about the pitching was implemented earlier than the hitting stuff with when it comes to player development, but I'm also not sure if when they're coming in from, you know, the draft and fresh in, are they really diving deep into that analytics, or they just let them do their thing to get a baseline and then working with them? It's very interesting stuff there.
Yeah, so definitely good insight from Johnny. And we'll get into now what's the big news of today. We're recording this episode on Monday. Jahmai Jones has finally been recalled from AAA Norfolk. Michael Franco was designated for assignment as part of a series of transactions today that saw the Orioles claim Connor Green off waivers from the Dodgers, option Richie Martin in Norfolk, and on Sunday, Cesar Valdez was sent to the Norfolk Tides after having been DFA'd a few days before. The big news there is Jones. We've basically been hearing from Orioles fans since about mid-June, when is Jahmai Jones going to get here? Because we saw this team really struggle at second base. And even when he cooled off at the plate last month in Norfolk, he's been picking it up a little bit lately, but even when he cooled off at the plate a little bit, you still had the sense that at some point they got to make this move, because when it does happen, he has the possibility to be an upgraded second base, despite the fact, you know, there have been questions about his defense.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And just a real quick thing on the transaction itself, Kelvin Gutierrez also came back up. And at first I was a little confused, like, why not Rylan Bannon? You're getting rid of Maikel Franco. Maybe you could do Bannon at third, Jones at second. You can mix in Mateo. But I think what they must be saying is we're got to get these guys at bats, and Gutierrez has a better chance of just being mostly a bench player, come in late defensively if he needs to. So overall, I came around on it, but hopefully we see Bannon soon as well too. But yeah, it's going to be fun to see Jones go out there. He's an athlete. He can work a walk. He can drive the ball. It's going to be interesting to see if he really needed that extra time. I don't know if there's any way that we could tell, but obviously they kept him down for a reason, and I think the time is right. And I'm definitely watching the game tomorrow. I wasn't planning on it before now.
Yeah, so this will actually not be Jones' major league debut. He got 7 at-bats towards the tail end of the 2020 season with the Angels, who he will now make his Orioles debut against most likely as the Angels come to Camden Yards on Tuesday. Just as a recap, because there's been a lot of trades between the Orioles and the Angels over the last 2 years or so. Jones was the return in the Alex Cobb trade that was made before the 2021 season. We saw him a little bit at Major League Spring Training, but he started this year at Norfolk, got off to a hot start. As I noted, had cooled off at the plate lately, but you look at the numbers that he put up at AAA Norfolk, 745 OPS while playing mostly second base with 10 homers, 10 steals. This is a guy that's a pretty athletic player, and although maybe, still a little bit raw in some areas, I think offers some upside that could benefit this team right now. And then, depending on how he does, he could be in that mix for starting second base job next year.
Oh, yeah, I definitely think it's kind of akin to me as when Austin Hayes got that look in September in 2019, and he really put on a good performance there. And then obviously came into 2020 looking like the starter, that he had earned it, but then he got hurt and et cetera with him. But this seems like a nice little tryout for him to try to take over second base. Or if you look at the guys that they have in the infield right now, you got Jahmai Jones, Jorge Mateo, Ramon Urias. So there's some versatility there. Jones could play left field. He could play second base. Urias can play all over the infield. Mateo can play pretty much everywhere except for catcher and pitcher. So it's a chance to just work him around, see where the best fit is. And I think Elias, his ultimate goal was going to be to have like 9 Shohei Otanis. They can play any position. They can pitch. They can do it all. So maybe Jahmai Jones is the first in that.
Well, I mean, there definitely has been a shift, I think, in the way that they're working with their middle infielders, because you look in the minor leagues, Taron Vavra's gotten some time in center field. Adam Hall had gotten time in center field before he got hurt at Aberdeen. So Jones came into the organization already offering that. He had been an outfielder, but then had played second base later on in his minor league career with the Angels. So that versatility, I think, has to appeal to the Orioles.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you got to find ways to get these guys in the lineup, especially if next year, in 2022, if we're going to be a young team, maybe we make a free agent signing or two. That remains to be seen. But if you think about it, there's a lot of guys that are going to be, banging on the door, starting to be expecting to get some call-ups, some looks at the major league level. Best way to get, all these guys in there and rotate them through, maybe have them playing 5 times a week, is some versatility. So you can have Mountcastle in left field, first base or DH, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think the one thing, and I think that, maybe we're not at the point where we were in June, where I think that there were some fans that may have thought that, like, Jones getting promoted to the major leagues was suddenly going to flip the switch and turn this team around. No player in the minor leagues right now should have to feel the pressure of come up and be the savior for the major league team. Yeah, really what you're just looking at is, can he get good at bats? Can he get good reps at second base? And get a good look in the outfield, too, which I suspect is going to be part of the plan. But I don't, it's not fair to him or really anybody else that be coming up from Norfolk here over the next 5 weeks or so to be expected to try to get the Orioles out of this mess.
Absolutely, especially with he did make his debut with the Angels, but very limited time at this level. He still was affected by the pandemic season, not getting many official at-bats. So, yeah, I don't even think Babe Ruth could come in here and help this team at this point. So let's keep the expectations low. Maybe he can hit a couple homers, steal a couple bases, make some nice plays on defense.
So, Bob, now that the Maikel Franco era is over, any thoughts there?
I mean, it was a good one. I mean, I was actually pretty fine with the signing when it happened in spring training. I mean, he had a pretty solid year for Kansas City last year. He came in as a power-hitting defensive liability at third base, and I actually think he played better defense than he hit for us. So it definitely didn't go as expected. He went on an injured list for a while. At least he was a body. He wasn't Rio Ruiz, so there's that. I'll give him that.
He hit that one really long home run that game at Camden Yards. I think he hit it off the facing of the upper deck or the facing of the club level. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, was that at the game we were at together?
It was around that. We weren't there that night, but it was around that time, I think.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that we'll always have that.
Yeah, we will always have that on the highlight reel from his time with the Orioles. So Vivek has a thought here with Vavra likely to be added to the 40-man, adds to the mix of Jones, Bannon, Urias, Martin. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a good mix there.
Yeah, and I can't wait to talk about the 40-man decisions. I mean, we've been teasing it for a while now, but even Adam Hall, is he going to be on there? Probably not, but does someone take a stab at a guy that could just sit on the bench and steal 30 bases pinch running for a season and then add him to their system? So Adam Hall, add him to their system. Get it? Yeah, I got nothing else.
Well, I mean, you could even put the same question out there about Caden Renier and his defense. Is there someone that loves that defense up the middle enough to decide, bring him in, make him a late inning defensive replacement, a guy that gets the occasional start, and then if the bat isn't there, just stick him down AAA next year to have his organizational depth.
Yeah, kind of like Richie Martin-esque, as the Orioles did.
Yeah, so there is going to be – I know that we're probably going to take a deep dive into that sometime maybe September or October and get into not just, I think, the players that we could see added to the 40-man roster, but the ones that could be removed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a lot of transition, I think, this offseason, as long as it doesn't get shut down for the majority of it. It could be definitely interesting. I don't even know. I was thinking about this the other day. How many of the players, I guess before Jones got promoted, are actually going to be on this team next year? I mean, it's got to be like 7 or 8 maybe. So this is why I think that Dan Connolly article, which we might get into, is a little bit off base, because I don't think this year's team has really anything to do with future teams.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think that you're looking at this roster right now, certainly in the starting rotation, the bullpen, and seeing a lot there, other than John Means, that you view as kind of a long-term, part of this plan that the Orioles have. So speaking of the 40-man roster, we're going to talk about a guy that's actually on there and who was added in the offseason. That was Rylan Bannon. Bannon missed some time with injury this year, but when he had been on the field, had really struggled at AAA Norfolk. All of a sudden, though, in the month of August, he's been probably the hottest hitter in the Orioles farm system and maybe one of the hottest hitters in the minors. So through 15 games this month, he's batting .306 with an OPS of 1.281 with 9 homers and 17 RBIs. That brings his total to 14 home runs on the year. I think some people may have expected that we were going to get an infielder called up from AAA today that would be Bannon, just because of how hot he's been, even though the overall numbers there still aren't great. But, Bob, I'll just jump in here with your thoughts. Is this one of those like DJ Stewart-esque tears where it's going to last for 7 to 10 days and then nothing happens after that? Or do you think that this is a sign that he's finally healthy and settling in at AAA?
I think it could go either way, that's for sure. And I said Babe Ruth couldn't even help this team, and maybe that's why they didn't bring Bannon up, because he's hitting like Babe Ruth right now, and it's not going to help. But no, I could see it going either way. He has probably the worst batting average for balls in play for maybe anyone in the minor leagues. It's like 167 or something. I mean, that's pretty dreadful. So the luck is just not been there. On top of the injury that he suffered earlier in the season, I wonder how much that played a factor. This is obviously the orange-colored glasses version of what's going on, and he's finally just putting it all together, getting healthy, and the luck turning around. It's probably somewhere in the middle. He's probably just say that his BABIP was like 275 instead of 167. He's probably hitting like 240, and his OPS is probably in the low 800s, which we would have accepted coming into the season.
Yeah, I mean, he's always been kind of an on-base guy, which, his batting average right now is 173, but his on-base percentage is 277. So that tells you that, even when he's struggling, he's able to get that on-base percentage up significantly more than the batting average. One thing I find interesting here, and this is how much of a tear he's been on with his power. He's played in only 58 games this year, and he's got 14 home runs, which includes one that he hit at Aberdeen while working his way back from injury. That surpasses the total he put up in 130 games in 2019 when he hit 11. And it's right now 8 homers shy of the career high of 22 that he hit back in 2018, the year that he came over to the Orioles as part of the Manny Machado trade. So I guess the question here with Bannon is, do you think that now that there seems to be a little bit more of an opening there, we see him at third base at some point?
Yeah, I definitely think he'll be up. I think, they don't open up the whole 40-man roster anymore for September, but it does increase by 2 roster spots. And I'm thinking they're going to give DJ Stewart until September 1st, and then we might see McKenna replace him on the roster, and then you bring Bannon up, and you have a little bit more of that young, exciting tryout of a month type of thing. I just think you got to get him up here. He's on the 40-man. Give him a shot. He's hot right now. You might as well see if he can translate it to the major leagues. He's not going to be, a guy that you're counting on, but if you don't give him a shot, I feel like now or this season at least, then he has a chance to be passed up pretty quickly by guys like Westberg, who's already in Double-A early or late into next season. So I would give him the shot. Why not? Doesn't hurt anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to try to be careful with it because if he's just getting his footing at AAA, do you want to make I think there is a risk in bringing him up too quickly if that's the case. But at the same time, you don't want to leave him down there indefinitely or I think even for another month because you're going to be running out of time at the major league level. And I think you at least want an idea of whether or not you can put him on that list next year of guys that could get a look at third base or second base, or even just as a utility option, because he can move back and forth between second and third. So if you have someone that can play those 2 spots and give you a little bit of something with the bat, that would be worth considering for an opening day roster spot next year.
Yeah, certainly. And depending on what they do in the offseason, if they sign Carlos Correa or they just sign, another Freddie Galvis type, I mean, he's a guy, third base is not, there's nothing really much doing there. So he definitely has a chance to win that job out of spring training or at least put himself right on that radar where he can come up at a moment's notice and step in.
So we're going to move on now. We're going to talk about something, and Bob and I had talked a lot about this leading up to this, so whether or not we're going to discuss it. But we've been hearing a lot about it from our listeners, and that's an article that Dan Connolly wrote in The Athletic last week. And the headline of the article is "The Dirty Little Secret the Orioles Rebuild is Pitching Cupboards Nearly Bare." Now, Connolly notes in his article that DL Hall and Grayson Rodriguez are both in the top 100, but throws a lot of skepticism towards the pitchers behind those 2 guys. And I know that Bob has some pretty strong feelings about this article, so I'm just going to go ahead and let him jump in now.
Yeah, luckily I've been on a couple other shows over the weekend to kind of burn that anger out a little bit. But I'm just coming around to, I think it's just journalistically irresponsible of The Athletic to have one guy covering the Orioles who has a particular opinion, and that's fine, but I think it's wrong, but it's okay to disagree. But where's the other voice that's going to come in? And now you have everyone that writes for that site just going along with whatever Connolly wrote, and that's his prerogative. But I disagree with it so entirely. From top to bottom, I just think it is a complete nonsense thing. I think it's very cherry-picked, the way that he said rival anonymous scouts. It's, only picking certain things here and there. The timing couldn't be better in the midst of a long losing streak where the pitching's been dreadful. But like I said earlier, I just don't think the season has anything to do with the real rebuild as a whole. I think there's plenty of pitching depth in the prospect system for the Orioles. Yeah, maybe not to the likes of Grayson Rodriguez or DL Hall, but who does? Nobody other than the Marlins. They're the only team with more than 2 top 100 pitching prospects in their system. We have guys like Gene Pinto who are maybe a little bit further away, but he could be a total stud just like Grayson and DL on the same level. We have guys like Kyle Branovich, Michael Bauman, Kyle Bradish, all these guys that have the potential to be mid to late mid to back end, starters, or at least good relievers, and those have value too. We also could sign free agents. It is allowed. We have plenty of financial flexibility, and we have a very, very deep farm system. In fact, it's the number 1 and number 2 rated farm system by most major outlets. And you can trade from that depth, as Houston did when Mike Elias was there, to acquire pitching in the vein of Justin Verlander, Zach Greinke, whatever. So, yeah, I got worked up again.
Well, yeah, in the Marlins, it's interesting you bring up the Marlins, because I think the Marlins have sort of operated on the opposite move of the Orioles. The Orioles have gone hitter heavy in their rebuild. The Marlins under Derek Jeter and now Kim Ng are very pitcher focused. And I don't know that necessarily one is better than the other, and time's going to tell us if that's the case. But, to have an organization that has bought into pitching at the minor league levels as much as the Marlins have, really be the only one ahead of you, says something, because the Marlins are far away ahead of everybody by design. That's what they're out to do, whereas the Orioles have targeted hitters. And we've talked about that repeatedly in our draft coverage. Is it going to work? Long term, we'll see. But I do think they're building enough depth that if the current group of pitchers that are in the minors now doesn't address all of their needs, they can go out and acquire more later.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I think we could see now the plan is draft, high upside bats, and when you draft pitchers, he's drafting relievers. He's drafting guys that he thinks can be really solid relievers. And obviously, I think you're going to want to use the international market to get some starters and some other high upside guys. But I think the trade market is where his value is acquiring pitchers, because pitching development is hard and it takes longer than hitting development. And why not trade for a guy who's already mostly developed or fully developed, rather than, there's no such thing as a pitching prospect, that mantra. So, yeah, I think it's by design, and yet still we have some of the best pitching prospects, because we have the best pitching prospect in Grayson Rodriguez, and we have a guy who has been in the top 100 for 2 or 3 years now, and one of the best lefties.
Do you think it's fair, given what we've seen kind of this year from these guys, like a guy like Kyle Bradish got off to such a dominant start and then has been more up and down at Norfolk? Does the fact that he struggled more at AAA dampen your expectations at all? Because I feel like we've been seeing a little bit of that more lately where, because Bradish is struggling, people aren't as hopeful about the pitchers behind him. The fact that Bauman's coming off the injury. I feel like both of those guys have put together great years under this circumstance. And but I'm curious to hear what you have to think about that.
I 100% feel exactly the same way now as I did 3 months ago when he was lighting it up in Bowie. I mean, this is what they want to do. We had Matt Blood come on here. They want to push these guys. They want them to struggle and to have to adjust. They could have kept him at Bowie until July or August and have him put up dominant, crazy numbers and try to get him pushed onto a top 100 list just to inflate the value. But no, they wanted to actually work on his skills. It wasn't much of a struggle for him in AA, so they moved him up to AAA with more experienced guys, and now he's working on it. Obviously, he has struggled, and there are things he needs to work on, but he was going to have to work on them regardless whether he's pitching in AA or AAA. At least now he's going through those struggles and can adjust from there.
Yeah, and that's part of the process of player development. These guys are going to be challenged at some point, and whether it's him or it's Kevin Smith or some of the work that Michael Baumann had to put in early on when he was coming back, this is all part of the process, especially with pitching.
Yeah, and I feel like Orioles fans, and I'm sure every team does this, you're only looking at your guys. But if you compare, to the league wide as a whole, the struggles aren't that out of the ordinary. This is part of it. This is how it goes.
Yeah, so there's a lot, that we're going to learn over the next few years. But I don't think that the approach to developing pitching right now is the way that it has ever been in Baltimore. And we just got to keep an open mind at this point. And you know what? Overall, the depth behind Rodriguez and Hall, no, there's no top 100 guys in there. I won't dispute that. But that's not really the point. That's not, you're not trying to stockpile a bunch of top 100 pitching prospects to use as your measure. You look at the depth from top to bottom, and it's pretty good. And, hey, if Michael Baumann ends up a reliever, I think he's going to end up being a pretty good one.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, as long as he can stay healthy. So I'm not I'm not too worried about it. And I know that it's really easy to get down on the Orioles right now because of the way that they're struggling at the major league level, and that all of the prospects that everybody's glued to, whether it's Adley Rutzman, Grayson Rodriguez, or even Jordan Westberg, aren't going to be here this year. They're probably not going to be here till this time next year at the earliest. If you're looking when all three will be here. So
I think two things go differently this year. Everything else is exactly the same. And it's a whole different story when it comes to #Birdland. If one of Aiken or Kramer performed the way they did last year, probably would have been Kramer if it was going to be someone. That's one more stable starter. And if just one of Alexander Wells or Zach Lothar or even Bruce Zimmerman was able to stay healthy, but one of Lothar or Wells was able to come up mid-year and, pitch effectively, not great, but just be there as a reliable guy that can run out there like Spencer Watkins is kind of doing now. Those two things, I think, would have changed everyone's tune. But ultimately, that's not really the guys that we're counting on in the future. So it's certainly a road bump and very disappointing, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, exactly. So, Bob, you mentioned you've been on the press junket over the last few days. Can you tell us where you've been plugging our show?
Yeah, I tweet out that Dan Connolly's article is trash, and all of a sudden I get invited onto a million different shows. But I was on Press Box Online's The Bat Around with Paul Valley and Zach Goodman. Zach Goodman wasn't there that day, but he's the normal host. I had a good time on there talking about everything that's going on with the pitching prospects and more overall. And then just this morning I was on the Masson All Access program with Brendan and Paul, and that was a great time. Wish I would have known that I was on video, so I would have looked at the camera more often, but it is what it is. So yeah, I had fun doing that. I'll talk about the Orioles all day, every day. Invite me on all your shows. I'm going to be on Talking Birdie on Thursday night. Those guys are great too, so looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll now move on to our final segment that we do every week, and Bob and I will carry that on with Nick's absence, and that's where we highlight a player outside of our top 30. Oh, we'll get to this question here real quick. P-Dubs80 asks, O's mimicking Astros hitting development plan and Ray's pitching development plan. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, actually, I kind of agree with that. That's a pretty good take there. Obviously, I think the Astros thing is right on, but the Astros had a decent pitching development as well. I could see that. I think everyone would love to see that. Both are good at doing those things, so yeah, I'll say yes.
If you could fuse those two things, you've built the best organization in baseball. I mean,
yeah.
So I think everybody wants to try to do that, and I think that the hitting development especially seems to kind of follow what the Astros did. So, I think if you're looking at those two as models, it's a wise move.
Yeah, for sure. That would be the dream, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll now get into this final segment and start off with the guy that Bob wants to highlight.
Yeah, I'm going to dig really deep. A guy I've been keeping my eye on since the Dominican Summer League started. We've heard about Michael Hernandez. We've heard about Samuel Basallo, but there's another name who is really lighting the world on fire down there. Over 70 at-bats. He's got a .357 batting average, .430 on-base percentage, and a .973 OPS with 5 doubles, a triple, 2 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 9 walks compared to only 11 strikeouts. And I'm talking about Anderson De Los Santos. 17 years old. I saw a tweet, I think it was yesterday, that showed that he has the best OPS amongst DSL players that are 17 or younger, so that's pretty impressive. This was a guy who was signed for $350,000 in the 2020 international signing class, which is still pretty high up there. If it was a year prior, he would have been up there with Luis Gonzalez and Luis Ortiz as having, that upper echelon for the Orioles, at least signing, but as is, he gets overshadowed a little bit by the $1 million babies, and he's lighting it up. And I'm really curious to see him next year if he gets pushed to Delmarva to start or if he's going to start in the FCL. But I want to see this guy play. It looks like he's got some skills.
Anytime a 17-year-old is putting up those type of numbers in pro ball, regardless of what level it is, I think we have to be kind of excited. And I think this does go into sort of that emphasis on up-the-middle talent that the Orioles are taking under Mike Elias. That we're seeing not just in the U.S.-based affiliates, but down in Dominican Summer League as well. So De Los Santos is a guy for me that, he's definitely jumped on my radar more here in the last couple of weeks. And I think we at least see him in the Florida Complex League next year. And he could be kind of in the mix with guys like Isaac De Leon now. where maybe they're not cracking that top 40, top 35 prospect list, but you're still really keeping a close eye on them because you know the potential is high.
Yeah, if this guy is putting up these numbers next year in Delmarva, then all of a sudden he is a top 30, top 20 type of prospect. So, yeah, it's definitely this is the thing we have to learn how to do as Orioles fans. How do we track these international guys? I think you just take note of what they're doing, try to keep their name in the back of your head, and then once they get to that full season ball where it's more competitive and more stats based, then you're really, that's when you make your move as far as your rankings and stuff.
So the guy that I wanted to shout out this week is Billy Cook, the 10th round pick out of Pepperdine in this year's draft. He was also promoted in that group from the Florida Coast League up to Delmarva. And it seems like he got lost in the shuffle a little bit, but I wanted to point out his numbers through his first 4 games at Delmarva. 5 for 15 to plate, 844 OPS. Overall now in his first 11 games, he's batting .306 with a 761 OPS. And here's something I find really interesting. 3 stolen bases at each level gives him 6 total, has yet to be caught. And in fact, he has more steals so far in 11 pro games than he had at Pepperdine in 33 games this season. We heard a lot about his speed coming out of the draft and that speed may allow him to stick in center field, even though he'd been a guy in college that played both infield and outfield. But what's interesting is when you look at his numbers in Pepperdine, the speed didn't necessarily translate into stolen base numbers, and now it is. So I'm curious to see how that looks going forward.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I wonder if the speed was always there, but for whatever reason, Pepperdine just, wasn't keen on sending guys. It was a strategy type thing, or if this is something the Orioles just said, go crazy, let's see how it goes. It's definitely interesting, but all these guys from the 2021 draft class have gotten off to pretty good starts. I really don't think there's any one that is just like, struggling completely. Connor Norby didn't have the best time in the FCL, but now he had a OPS over 1,000 in his first week in Delmarva. So, yeah, Billy Cook, another exciting name in the outfield to add to the list.
Delmarva has so much outfield talent now. We talked about at the beginning of the year how they had all these infielders. So, how are you going to sort out all these infielders? And they had guys like Henderson, Servideo, Westberg, Hernaiz there. Now they have Cook, Cowser, Rhodes, and Trimble that they can run out in the outfield any given night. And
Dante Williams, don't forget.
Yeah, Dante Williams. So you've got 3 or 4 legitimate center fielders in there, not just good outfielders, but guys that can play center field pretty well.
It's no wonder we're seeing outings like Jensen Elliott and Houston Roth yesterday having 4 innings with no strikeouts, but not giving up any runs. The defense is chasing them down. It helps.
Yeah. So the next month or so is definitely going to be a fun time to be a Shorebirds fan. We're going to be back next week with Kyle Glazer of Baseball America is set to join us, and we'll have Nick back with us as well. So the 3 of us are really looking forward to that. In the meantime, check out BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com for all the latest articles on there on the Orioles, Ravens, and more. Be sure to hop on the message board and join the discussion. You could comment on Bob's 2 latest stories that went up on the site today, or you could comment on something else there that you have an interest in. Certainly a lot of good content on the site as well as on our other BSL radio podcasts. So be sure to check that out. And in the meantime, follow us on Twitter at BSL on The Verge. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to On The Verge.
Get paid up to 2 days early through direct deposit with the Chime checking account. Sign up today at chime.com/fee-free. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Access to direct deposits up to 2 days early depends on the timing of the submission of the payment file from the payer.
At Sleep Outfitters Outlet, great sleep is a big deal. Save 40 to 60% every day on every Sealy, Stearns & Foster, and Tempur-Pedic. Queens as low as $249. Customer exchanges, closeouts, and floor samples. Inventory changes daily, so come in for your dream deal today. With no credit needed financing, expert advice, and up to 60% off retail, it's never been easier to get the sleep and savings you deserve. Go to SleepOutfittersOutlet.com for financing details and to find a store near you.